Welcome back, everyone, to Web3 Unpacked. I'm Rich Pasqua, and joining us today is Kelsey McGuire, Chief Growth Officer at Shardium, an EVM-based auto-scaling Layer 1 blockchain that aims to address the scalability trilemma by using dynamic state sharding. Welcome, Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Rich. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we've been planning this for a while, and we're glad to get you on and learn more. Now, Kelsey, you've got an interesting background in Web3, and we're going to get into it a little bit more about your background, but you've started with Coin Census, which is kind of a big deal in our world, and heading up marketing and strategy, and later heading up experiential marketing for them. You went on to be CMO of Coin Fund and a Web3 advisor as well. And now you're at Shardium. So we're happy to dig in and learn more about you and your products.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Rich. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I started back in full-time in Web3 in 2018 at Consensus. And really before that, I did not know a whole lot about Web3. I guess those were relatively early days, but I had a background more on the kind of luxury fashion and beauty industry side of things. But as much as there were really fun elements there, like these artist collaborations that we worked on, it just wasn't where I wanted to stay. And I started hearing about blockchain technology and Web3 a little bit, probably in 2017 from some of my banker friends who were nervous about it. And I feel like anything that's making the banker friends a little bit nervous is kind of worth looking into. They were forming little groups to try to figure out how they could leverage the technology back then. And so I gave myself a little crash course and ended up being able to join Consensus and focus on a lot of their community efforts back in the day. And of course, that evolved into a much bigger career, but it was a great start.
Yeah, I mean, what a place to get started. Consensus, community building, and literally you hit the sweet spot because no one's a pro. I'm not, you're not. No, I haven't met one just yet in the Web3 space. Everyone's still learning. And it happened for me in a very similar way where I was sitting around a lot of developers and there was a lot of chit chat. And then you pick up on it and you're like, whoa, and this is 12 years ago or so. And what is this? And then you realize like, wow, this really has the power to change. Like a true trustless system has the power to change a lot of systems and a lot of things. So that's great. You kind of kept your ear to the ground. You kept learning and asking questions. And I tell our audience and my friends in the space, keep asking questions. So that's great. Now, let's talk about what you're doing now. Can you give us a little brief overview of Shardium and kind of what you're doing? We're going to peel back the layers a little bit, but just kind of give us the 40,000 foot view.
Absolutely. So Shardium is an L1, EVM-based, and we're focused on solving the trilemma. So basically not sacrificing on security, scalability, or decentralization as we create this sort of foundation layer for the blockchain. But it's interesting to me because as a lot of different projects say they're extremely community oriented, you've already seen I have kind of a community focused theme in my career so far. It seemed like they were really doing it, pounding the pavement and getting out there. So I joined about 2 years ago and have been with them as their CGO ever since.
Very nice. And, let's talk about who Shardium's for, as far as audience or demographics, if you will. I mean, I think it's fairly diverse in that world, but who's it for and what problems are you literally solving with this product?
Yeah, I feel like we have this kind of tagline right now. It's like decentralization for everyone. So we want to think that it's for everyone. I feel like where realistically Web3 and blockchain technology is right now, it's for people that are, willing to engage, of course, developers, investors, broader investors, on the retail side and community members that maybe found some of their other experiences with the technology to be a little daunting. Maybe they didn't have the community support that they wanted. Maybe it was a little too expensive to engage, or maybe they felt a little bit limited by how those other projects were handling scalability. So we wanted to build something that addressed some of that, but really kind of focused on the people first a little bit more from both the community side and how we really try to get out there and educate people as well. Because a lot of folks, a lot of projects can build incredible technology, and we are no exception. I'm really excited about what we're building here. But I think what will make us very different is our continued focus on the human element and our community.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, community is with any Web3 project, it's king, really. Cultivating it, and I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and learning more about Shardium, and you guys really do. And we'll get into it a little bit more later, but you really do emphasize like the local aspect of things as well, which I think is beautiful. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of your neighborhood blockchain. So we're getting out there with this proof of community series that has been global. We've hosted them throughout India to New York City to all over the place. We had a pop-up one in Europe, and I think during actually ECC when I was out there in Brussels. So it's this truly global effort that is seeking to foster connectivity, because I feel like what makes some of these different projects sticky is if you're there with a supportive group, if you're there making friends, like this is for people and it's supposed to be enjoyable too. So that really kind of helps you plug into that while engaging with a new and sometimes intimidating technology. So those programs have been amazing. There was a backpacking India program that was part of all of this, where some of my colleagues traveled to both big cities and some remote universities around India, with different educational content pieces, with talks to give, with just kind of fostering those types of connections that we were looking for. And it was really exciting to see the positive reception there. It was also interesting that I feel like in some of the more remote areas, people were at the point where they're like, wait, Web3 and blockchain, is this still a thing? It still exists. So clearly there's still a lot of work to be done as well.
Mm. Well, that sounds like a pretty epic, work trip. I'll give you that. That sounds like right up my alley. Like hiking, meeting new people in different countries, and talking about technology. It sounds like a beautiful way to do things. And but I think it's a really unique thing to do, actually. I mean, you see some CEOs in the TradFi world or traditional world, 2.0 world, do things like this, but I think it's actually super important to do this in the Web3 space because it is fresh and new. And to your point, you hear people saying, "Oh, is it still a thing?" Well, yeah, it's actually just snowballing. It's actually picking up momentum, and it's great that you're doing it on a local level. Now, with Shardium, there's lots of benefits, right? I believe lower gas fees, which is like music to anyone's in the Web3 space's ears, and scalability. So can you and you guys say it's the trilemma, the scalability trilemma. Can you break that out a little bit for us?
Absolutely. So, we are very in line with that idea around low gas fees, like you mentioned, because how are we really connecting with and serving a broad community if a lot of folks can't afford it? We don't want this to be a high barrier to entry way to access Web3. This is supposed to be something that feels like friendly and easy and that you can easily engage with. So, and then in terms of the trilemma, it connects to a little bit of what I mentioned before, is we saw other projects that we felt like were sacrificing decentralization for scalability and security. And we're solving that with our auto scaling as well as a few other core technical components that really do make sure that we don't have to sacrifice on decentralization. We don't have to sacrifice on security, and we don't have to sacrifice on scalability. The network is, I feel like a good way to picture it is, it's elastic. As there's more demand, more transactions, you're able to grow with it. But what happens to, like, say, a hairband or something, when you take it out of your hair, it gets back to being small. And that helps us keep those
Mm.
fees low, and it helps it adjust automatically based on demand. So it's something we're really excited about. We haven't seen a lot of these different kind of core pieces combined in the way that we've combined them. And frankly, we're also excited to work with other L1s, L2s, and beyond to create something that really can serve a broader community than what we've been seeing so far.
Yeah, a lot of great things in there, and I like the whole flexible gas system. It's unique and pretty interesting. You're hearing people saying no gas fees now. I don't know how that's actually going to work for some from layer ones, but really interesting. And that flexibility is super important. Also, interchain operability, right? So being able to operate chain to chain and work with different types of currencies and swapping mechanisms and systems is super important. So paying attention to that is really great, and it's good to hear. Now, one of the things that interested me about Shardium, but more in particular yourself, and it was the idea that you're rooted in marketing, right? In a lot of communications, and I think that's really important and sometimes overlooked or underinvested in within the Web3 space. And I'm sure you may agree with that in certain products and tools. But our audience, that we do have some crossover: marketing, advertising, design, technology, coding. A lot of people kind of coalesce around the Web3 Unpacked space. And, we would like to know more about how, with the tools, the marketing channels you're using, and what makes you a little bit different than other people within the marketing space.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to dig into that a little bit more. It's been such a journey with Web3 marketing, and I think we've made some great strides here, and something that we really want to focus in on, and we can all do better, is to clearly illustrate why someone should care every single time. And by that, I mean, we see a lot of projects, and we've all done this before, where it's, we have this new feature, we have that new feature, but what does that actually mean to everyone? Does it
Mm.
mean you can actually access this technology? Does it mean you can afford it or not? Because after a certain point, if you don't have that context of why it should matter to you, you're really kind of missing it on the marketing and communication side, in my mind. So there's been a huge shift there, and I think it's something we continue to focus on, that really kind of serves as the backbone of what we're trying to do on the marketing side, because that really connects in with community. For me, Web3 marketing and community are just, they need to stay like this, stay together, and really operate in lockstep, because that idea of framing everything as why someone should care directly connects into the community. Because what are you doing this for? You're doing it for people. So if they don't understand why this is actually supposed to be interesting to them, you're not serving your community either, and you're not fostering or growing community at all. So that's a huge
Mm.
piece. I think another undervalued element in Web3, and I feel like you'll probably have some observations on this as well, is branding. And that's something that we're very focused on at Shardium. We did a whole brand refresh process, which was really well received. We engaged with the community to ask them questions along the way. And especially at the stage where we are now as a project, I'm not saying that if you're a 2-person team and have no funding, that yes, you need to do a full rebrand and rethink your entire visual identity right away. It's that when you're a little bit, later stages like we are, I mean, we're approaching mainnet now, that you want an identity that people can connect with right away. Because again, that fosters that sense of community. You want something that feels visually aligned with what you're doing. And that was another big focus of ours. But I'm sure, like I mentioned, that you have some thoughts on that as well. And I do think it's often undervalued in the Web3 space.
Absolutely. It's definitely the cloth I'm cut from. And I love re-envisioning with CMOs, CTOs, CEOs, who you are and how you communicate. It's very exciting, and you guys did a great job with the brand rollout. And it
Thank you.
looks great. It's communicating well, and everyone associates a lot of brand stuff with very visual, or the product itself. Which, yes, that's a big part of it, but it's also the verbal identity, right? And and this is an observation across the board, having met with so many different companies over the years and worked with a lot of different Web3 companies, is that and this is not unique to Web3, 2.0 or TradFi, Trad World, they often do this, meaning they speak inward to themselves. And a lot of times they just speak to the developer community, which is very advanced in a lot of ways, as far as technology, understanding the processes, different economics or tokenomics, the entire system. They get it, but really, there's this kind of point where we have to actually open the box, open the doors to a lot of different people. And that's why I like talking to folks like you, who come from a 2.0 world, and you're always going to value and use those techniques and thoughts and ideas, but they have to be amplified a little bit differently and communicated at different points in the journey differently. So I always say, look at what you're doing and who you're talking to. If you're talking to yourselves, that's great for the first year, maybe. But you need to explore and open the boxes. And I think you guys are doing that, and it's great. And I think this is just a message for anyone in Web3. Look beyond your own nose,
Exactly.
because your audience is growing, actually. And that's a beautiful thing. So now, Kelsey, when we talk about communications, obviously digital touch points it's everything for the Web3 world. And it's nice to hear that you guys are actually getting physical in locations and IRL. But what other digital marketing tools or communication tools are you guys using at Shardium?
Yeah, absolutely. So Discord is really important to us. We have over 700,000 people in our community on Discord, which
Mm.
is really exciting to see. So, of course, that
Wow.
makes it an essential tool for us. This is where we're trying to get questions answered. We're trying to provide updates, and truly engage and try to get a sense of, what's going on with the community and what do they want to see. So that's a big one. Of course, Twitter as well, like the rest of Web3. One day, I hope there is another platform. But for now, I feel like that's still a lot of where the conversation is happening. I see the occasional different kind of Web3 kind of Twitter startup project, but I've just not seen the amount of traction yet that has caused us to fully kind of invest our small team's time in that type of endeavor. But of course, for Twitter, I think it's a lot of focus on video clips, which we leverage, YouTube. We make videos, share the clips over there, and really getting everything you can out of every single little piece of content, as well as announcements there. And then Telegram, I think, is another really crucial tool that sometimes we don't think about, both from like a larger community building perspective, but also from this key element of marketing, which is, partner marketing perspective. That's where a lot of those conversations are happening. That's where those collaborations are happening. And that's another really important place to keep both your partners and your investors updated on what you're doing, because you never know what can kind of come out of those different connections. And that's something I think we can keep doing a little bit better in Web3 that, kind of the 2.0 background was really good at, was fostering these connections and really investing in these partnerships and putting in a huge effort to see where you can go together. And that's where I had a lot of success with the brands I worked with before as well.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, well said. And you just illustrated kind of like the beauty of having lots of channels to work with, but it also becomes a little bit tedious in the same respect. I love Discord, and I always use Discord for my projects and my company as a focal point so people can learn. There's little learning annexes within that experience. You have ambassadors that you can, promote and, speak with within that community. But then you've got the X community, which is unique unto itself. And I've seen some Web3 organizations actually not abandon Discord. They have it there, but they use it like this little annex to almost like a little university, if you will. And then X is just super fast information downloads, airdrops, all that good stuff, which is great. But it also creates a lot of noise as well. I think X is a beautiful, free, open space to communicate about yourself and your products, but it does become a little noisy at times. So having a home base that you can point people back to that's kind of noisy if you want it to be, but quiet and almost like a library to study and learn is also a very, very good thing. And then you've got the Telegrams of the world and the Signals. And I tend to like Signal for business communications because it truly is end-to-end encryption. If that's important to you. But Telegram, absolutely. I don't think it's a place to grow your community. I mean, you can certainly do outreach, but it is about, one-on-one business relationships. And to your point, Kelsey, fostering partnerships and growing those partnerships. I'm doing that like literally this week with a group of people where we're just creating a little kind of investment thing or how we can work together kind of little bubble that we're creating. So there's so many different ways to kind of get involved in this world. I also, as far as getting involved, and I think, you touched on it a little bit before, and we talked about IRL community, virtual communities, but you, and I love, obviously from a branding perspective, I love new catchphrases that are bubbling up in Web3, like proof of community, right? Events. Can you give us a little bit more? Can you fill that in for us a little bit more as far as proof of community? Because I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Proof of Community is our owned meetup series, and they come in almost different flavors. We've had them for investors, we've had them for broader communities when we're new somewhere, like, hey, we're new to New York City. We hosted a series that was more for the broader community there. And what the kind of formula there is, it's an educational moment. So we have a panel. That's a great opportunity to bring together some of your partners, come up with a shared narrative that's actually interesting to the audience there, and then some sort of reception. So you can hang out a bit, chat with people afterwards, and really get to know some other folks that are kind of in the orbit of Shardium or at least in Web3. The investor geared one, of course, is geared more towards investors. And so it's getting that community together and, of course, presenting on our roadmap and what things look like ahead that happened a little while ago. And then we also have had more university geared ones. That's kind of a teaching broader Web3 moment. So it's a fairly broad umbrella of different owned meetup activities that also can sometimes coincide with the big conferences. And I feel like a lot of these conversations I have, it's hard to not touch on these huge conferences that are happening now. Seems like every day in Web3. I feel like a few years ago, there were far, far fewer of these conferences. And now I see the calendar is in every month. There are so many. So I think a key part for anyone's strategy here is figuring out the right combination for you and your goals and your community that you're hoping to grow of these owned meetups with potentially you plus partners, plus engagement in larger conferences and how these different pieces fit together. Because it's a little different from everyone. There's certain things that seem to work across the board, but it is really important to have a plan when you go to a conference. And I cannot emphasize that enough, especially with the amount of time and budget that it takes to travel.
100%. You hit a lot of really interesting things because I do like conferences in different ways, whether I'm covering events or I'm actually speaking at an event or whatever I'm doing. It is hyper important to come in with a game plan, understand who you're speaking to and what they want to get out of it. And you're absolutely right. There's so many moving parts to this world that you can't like unload everything on everyone in one conference. You have to kind of tailor it and focus it in a little bit more. But you also, me, and everyone else involved in this world for the past X amount of years do have an obligation to educate people and to your point, show them how the pieces fit together. That's super important because people are, oh, I know NFTs, I know DeFi, I know this, that, and the other thing. Well, layer ones, layer twos. Well, how does it all play together? What is tokenomics? What is this? What is that? And how does it all play together? And more importantly, how does it play together in the business world, right? So part of what we have to do is allow business folks, VC folks, whoever you are within the business landscape, help them dream about business possibilities around efficiencies and automation and even, AI to DeFi, allow them to dream. So I think that's super important. And I love the idea of going in with a plan to every event, because every event is different. And with that said, now you have a kind of you're building this kind of globally diverse and inclusive community, as we know. How does this apply to, say, the developer community? Because just if we were to zoom in on one type of community, that would have to be it for many Web3 projects. So how are you working with community, the development community, which is very different than your traditional development community? A lot of times they don't want to be seen. They like to work in the shadows and whatnot. So kind of pulling them out, bringing them to, say, hackathons or live events. What's your thinking behind that?
Yeah, I do think that that is extremely important. And in the past, especially when I first started in this industry, I was surprised at the willingness to come out and engage with these hackathons. I remember I was in Berlin, maybe in 2018, and I think that was my first time seeing an all-night hackathon. And the level of dedication that you can get, like supply some energy drinks, have a meaty problem for people to kind of dig into. And it's a great combination, and it's so valuable for projects to engage in that way. So I say, like, definitely still investing. It's harder to build that diverse developer base when you are just 100% focused on in-person events, because there's always going to be people that can't travel. You can't be everywhere around the world all at once. So I think partnering that with a very robust kind of digital strategy, where I've seen some different types of, hackathons and programs for developers that are, online only. And maybe there's a few pillar events every year that are those in-person hackathons, or you pair your hackathon, alongside a big conference where maybe their work is already sending them, or maybe they've already saved up and are investing in being there, or maybe it's close to them. But making sure that you're not creating extra trips for people to do this is also extremely important if you want to get kind of that diverse developer base. So I think that alongside really strong resources and actually being invested in answering those questions and having a robust, if you can, DevRel team alongside you is a recipe for success there, but is really hard to achieve as well.
Yeah, great points there, Kelsey. It's a tough community. It's a tough nut to crack sometimes. Because they like to work the way they like. And sometimes, as I was mentioning before, it's very, very virtual, very online. But the special part is when you get them in a room with an interesting problem to solve, that's really, really special, because then they make actual physical connections with other developers, aka the entire development community. And those are bonds that are not easily made in a virtual environment. And once you do that, now there's an attachment to your brand, the mission, and the problems that you're solving. and then there are human beings around it. And I see it all the time where you don't see it the first year you run either a hackathon or your own conference, if you will. But the second year, it's like, in the third year, it's like, oh, are we going to get that group back together again? We're going to go to that place again, or whatever it is. Yes, it's business. Yes, it's code. It's building and excitement, but it's also like, we had a blast. And
Yeah.
you can't buy that, right? So, really good stuff. Now, one of the things that is near and dear, if you really understand this space, is decentralization, right? And you and I think our audience here at Web3 Unpacked understands the importance of decentralization. And I'm not talking about one or two, two or three nodes. I'm talking about true decentralization. Could you give us, like, what are some of the decentralized challenges you're having within the L1, L2, the EVM compatible blockchain space? What are challenges you guys are facing right now, and the importance of decentralization?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like there's a couple buckets here, and one is on the tech side, where I feel like there's been an ongoing challenge with kind of harkening back to the trilemma talk, where, okay, if we're fully decentralized, are we scalable? Are we secure? And really trying to crack that on the tech side, which is something, of course, we're super focused on. But I think an equally important aspect of decentralization is the human side of it. So, is your community truly decentralized? That's a really hard thing to achieve.
Mm,
But in my mind, if we really want to create something different with this technology, we do need to be striving for that on the human side as well. Because the people that are building the technology and interacting with the technology are shaping its future. And so, if we have the same core groups consistently engaging with it in specific geographies, and we're not building something then as incredible as it could be, or that will serve as many people and their unique needs as it could.
mm,
And that's something we're seeking to address with the Proof of Community series, with the engagement in the different conferences, with translated educational materials into different languages. But I think it's still going to be a big, sometimes uphill feeling push here, because we're all used to just engaging in our own kind of specific cities and neighborhoods and existing communities. And to build what I think we all really want to build, we have to reach outside of that.
mm. Yeah, and I love the term proof of community for a lot of different reasons, because the idea is bubbling up, and brands. It's nothing new to brands. It's called loyalty, right? Loyalty programs. But now you have, when, say, the idea of smart contracts and NFTs mature beyond, the Bored Apes and whatnot, proof of attendance, proof of community. It's very one and the same in that it becomes its own economy unto itself. So attending, you may get 10x your points on attending a Shardium event in IRL, or slightly less for a virtual one, or whatever. And then you also become a contributor to the community, and you get paid for being an ambassador. Or I use the term paid loosely. You earn based on the education that you're offering here and there, whether it be 5 minutes or 5 hours. So it really becomes its own economy. And I've been having conversations with so many people around this lately, and it's, well, what are people going to do in the future when we have crazy amounts of AI and they're handling our accounting and everything's on the blockchain and accounted for? Well, people are going to be ambassadors. People are going to be educators. People are going to still entertain and create. It's just, we're going to get paid in a much more fluid manner. Our agreements are going to be more fluid. And I think the same is said with community building. It becomes its own little ecosystem and economy. And I think it's wonderful. And just to keep that thought going really, really quickly, Kelsey, the idea of education, and we dipped into this a little bit during our session today. Um, we know that educating people in the Web3, it's paramount. It's paramount for building better and smarter people that can build better and smarter products, but it's also onboarding as well. And it, to a lot of your great points throughout our discussion is, making people feel welcome, right? I'm seeing a lot of, and we talked about Discord being kind of this home base. I see a lot of people building very sophisticated products, and they have to train the normies, if you will, whether you're business or consultant or you're actually building things yourself. You have to educate those folks, and they're starting to create like universities around their products, which is really interesting, very tailored higher education outside of, say, the traditional ed system, which is mind blowing unto itself. Are you guys doing anything like that, where you kind of enrolled? Maybe it's accredited.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And it's something that we had a Shardium university, but very different from the type of university that
Mm.
you're discussing. But it is something we're kind of kicking the tires on a little bit, especially for post mainnet activities, because we do really want to continue investing in educating people. And I think that that's a great way to do it when people can show that they've been a part of a program and have that sort of social proof. And I think a really interesting other impact of having a program like that is sparking curiosity in others. And that's, of course, like the first step in any, I feel like, educational program is, we want to keep educating the folks that are already engaged in the space, but sparking curiosity in the folks that aren't. And I think that universities, things that look and feel recognizable and are in a format that's very digestible to people that aren't in Web3 will be key here. Because we want to create something that, people approach with curiosity rather than frustration or even disdain after seeing some of the different market cycles. So this educational element will be key in evolving that perception, because we do overall, I think, as an industry, have a bit of reception issue that this, education is really the only cure for down the line.
Yeah, well said, and really good little details in there. And the things that stuck with me there, Kelsey, was the idea of like accreditation and recognition of certain, say, traditional universities. Maybe you can piggyback on a lot of that stuff, to make people aware of, oh, that's MIT, that's Yale, that's Harvard, whatever it may be, and attaching like almost co-branded kind of things. It is important, but also on the flip side, a lot of people are in Web3 because of the shenanigans that the federal governments have played globally, not just ours in the US, and universities have played. The cat's out of the bag, right? So making those strategic partnerships and tie-ins together is will be very interesting to see how it plays out in the next couple of years. Now, with that said, as we're wrapping up a little bit here, I always like to kind of get our guests' thoughts on the future a little bit. So, outside of the world of Shardium, which we know you're all consumed by and love, and you're pushing forward, what are you most excited about within the Web3 space, maybe in the next year?
You know what? I have been so encouraged to see and continue to be excited by more of a focus on the user experience. So
Mm.
for a long time, and I think this was a natural progression too, like we're all focused on building, building, building. It doesn't matter if it's easy to use. It doesn't matter all the time if it is solving quote unquote like real problems. It's building, it's experimenting, building, breaking, all of that kind of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm seeing that start to evolve in a way that I think is really positive when we look at broader adoption. And that is, hey, if something takes 10 more clicks than what we're used to do something similar, no one's going to do it. or if, hey, this feels scary and confusing and I have to write a bunch of words down on a piece of paper and put it in a safe and I'm terrified, we're not going to grow the way we want as an industry. So I see a lot of people in the space like actively seeking to address that. I see it working its way into many more conversations now. And that's incredibly encouraging because one thing that I've seen time and time again, whether it's a extra click for even like a charitable donation or something else, is people will not sacrifice an ounce of convenience. And we just need to get to that point where it feels just as convenient. We're basically melting into the background. And that's when we'll see that big spike of adoption. But I see it. So I'm really clearly very excited about it.
I couldn't agree with you more. Being a user experience expert or specialist myself, and I think Steve Jobs said it the best. I believe it was Steve Jobs, is when the technology disappears, that's when you really know that your product and your experience is truly successful. And I think I'm glad you said everything you said about user experience, because it's 100% true. And I use myself as someone who designs these experiences, whether it be 2.0 or 3.0, DeFi or entertainment or news or whatever the experience is. And someone who's been using Web3 products for many, many years, it's a very fragmented experience. And if you don't know, like this, say, currency or token only works on this network or that how many funds are lost every second of the day, literally trapped within networks that you cannot escape. And those are simple usability experience type of scenarios that can be rectified fairly quickly. But I also think, being a design nerd too, you also, it's so fresh and new that we have to create the road signs, right? And the vernacular, the language, both visual and verbal, all of that has to kind of congeal and kind of come together as well. But that's why we're here. And this is the new superhighways that we're building. And that's the exciting part. It's very frustrating at times, even for myself, and yourself probably. We're people who use and beat these products up and use them every day. And it's still confusing. Still have a very long way to go. But again, I think we have the right people behind it. And I think to some of the earlier discussion we had, Kelsey, is some of the efforts, like from all technology, like all the money goes into technology. Nope. Well, there has to be a balance. Now we have to really invest in usability and scalability, right? Modular design networks that can grow with the product and not alienate or complete teardowns in the next year. These are all the little building blocks and systems that we're just all trying to figure out now. So very exciting times. And thank you for that. And thank you for this conversation. It's been really eye-opening, and I've noticed that you guys are taking, and yourself are taking some really unique and human steps to improving this beautiful world we call Web3. Now, where can we find you and Shardium on the web?
Yeah, please check out our website. It's shardium.org, at Shardium on Twitter. And then for me personally, I'm not super active on LinkedIn, but if you ever need to reach me, send a message over. I do like chatting with people. That's just Kelsey McGuire on LinkedIn. You should be able to find me there.
Cool. And I will list everything below so everyone can hit you up, get involved. I would encourage our audience, our viewers and listeners to kind of check out Shardium, see what the network is all about, and really understand and discover a little bit of the difference between them and so many other players out there. So, Kelsey, we look forward to having you back, do a check-in, keep the conversation going, and see how you and Shardium are progressing in the future.
Thanks, Rich. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Web3 Unpacked is proudly published by Movement, a leading design consultancy that specializes in Web 2 and 3, strategy, design, branding, creative content development, and content marketing. We help companies ensure that their brand and business remain differentiated and competitive in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. To learn more, please visit mvmt.media